Some portions of Europe are so down the path of cultural enrichment that it's getting increasingly hard to even count how many times they have been enriched just last week. Yet for some reason, we are the extremists for pointing that out. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. It is no longer an exaggeration or even an expression of hyperbole to say that even counting the aggressions inspired by the religion of peace upon the peoples of Europe is in itself a difficult task. Even trying to remember all the attacks of the last 10 days leading up to this recording is not an easy task at all without thorough documentation on the internet. That is the new normal. A situation that could have easily been avoided, and a situation about which there have been extensive warnings for the last 10 or 15 years, all of which of course dismissed by the enlightened, humanist and tolerant progressive elite whose members genuinely believe that they know better than the rest of us how the rest of us should be living our lives. The most noteworthy aspect of these last 10 or so days is the emergence of teenagers as terrorists. One pen pal of mine was amongst those wounded in the Munich attack perpetrated by an 18-year-old. Also in Germany, a 17-year-old went full religion of pieces with an axe to grind. Literally. Now, this shows, to me at least, that it was not extremist nor an irrational phobia on behalf of the Islamocritic sector of the society to tend to reject even the so-called children. Now, in addition to the fact that some of the children are actually not children at all, as Sweden is slowly starting to learn the hard way, even those that are children still do pose a very serious and immediate danger. In fact, I would go as far as to say that children and teenagers pose a disproportionate threat when compared to those over the age of 35, for the simple reason that a teenager's mind is far more impressionable and thus easier to turn towards various versions of the Wahhabi school of thought of the religion of special needs. Now, add this to the fact that the countries from the former Western Bloc do not rigorously police their diversity and progress, and the recipe for disaster is complete. Now, mind you, I am not saying any of these with any trace of joy or of a I told you so feeling, even though I could reference my own words of 9 months ago when I did mention that civil war-like events will emerge everywhere by next summer. That would be this summer. But that's of little importance right now. What is of much larger importance, much higher importance, is the fact that even now, after almost a year of experience, direct experience, the political class of most of Europe seems to have learned exactly nothing from any of this. Now, to make things worse, other radical agitprop groups have started to emerge as well, and following the good old far-left slogan of never letting a good crisis go to waste, there are now Black Lives Matter protests in France. Now, let's call them les dindiaux nous fin, so we can respect the good old French tradition of avoiding Anglophone imports into their language. Now, not only there are exactly zero even remotely legitimate grievances in France for les dindiaux nous fin, but the last thing France needs right now is tensions along racial lines, whilst the state is already utterly failing in protecting its citizenry from the religion of peace. I mean, at the very least, there is, or there was, a pre-existent tension between the majority culture and the religion of peace, but along racial lines? Now, that line of conflict was dead and buried for decades now. Yet all of that may indeed be reversed thanks to the Soros-funded Mouvement de les dindiaux nous fin. Now, at this point, I would be surprised if the majority of the general public isn't already asking itself, what's next? However, I'm not convinced that the majority of the general public wants to hear the answer, because the answer is not a pretty one. The immediate future, that is until 2018 or so, is going to be more or less look like the daily reality of the perpetual intifada in Israel, with members of the religion of peace attacking random people for the sin of not being part of the House of Peace, otherwise known as Dar al-Islam. Now what has been seen in the last 10 days is merely the beginning of a very long period of this nonsense happening on the streets of European cities. Now, when does it stop? Well, it stops either through full integration of Western Europe into Dar al-Islam or through a change in politics. Now, one should not hope things will get better as long as more than 70% of the populace votes for more of the same, as it's still the case in Germany, where last elections yielded an 85% vote in favor of the same political parties that propose more diversity, more progress, more cultural enrichment, and more youths. As long as that doesn't change, there is not and cannot be any hope. Now, mind you, I'm not necessarily saying that groups like the AfD or especially Front National are a solution. In fact, I think they most definitely are not. Front National's economic program looks like it's been written by Lenin, for crying out loud. But the more time is being wasted on trying to cover up the problem, as the political establishments are busy doing it right now, the less time there will be available for forming more decent alternatives. And if things go on the way they are now, there will come a moment when the electorate will say, now you know what, fuck it. One goes to war with the army one has rather than the army one wishes to have. And when that happens, it's game over. Just saying. Anyway, with all of that being said, thank you for watching and thank you for your continuous support. I'll see you soon on Freedom Alternative.